Thanks for joining us at Bellsouth for our series on feeding backyard poultry. We looked at chick feeders in our last series, and we looked at using a small feeder like this for chicks as well. But we would use this with adult birds, with our 5 birds on a standard laying type diet with a pellet diet. Of course, 5 kilograms is great for 5 birds or 4 birds or 3 birds, but it's a bit limited if you come down to having a dozen birds in there. It would mean that you're really filling it up every day. So when we come to the larger numbers, of course, we use a larger feeder. Now, the larger feeder is not necessary from the point of view of the amount of space around the bottom, but it is important from the amount of space inside. I always like to plan a shed from the point of view of I want to fill up the feeder only on weekends. Now that means if I go away for a week, I can still know that there is a feed supply that will last me a week. So here's an 18 kilo pellet feeder which will last 18 birds a week or 12 birds for a week and a half or something similar. So if you had a dozen birds or something similar, you would put a feeder like this in there. Again, always between back and eye height of the bird, always held up nice and high and always adjusted so the feed level at the bottom is at a minimum level. Now if I move on to free range style birds, I might go right up to a monster like this that'll hold 30 to 40 kilos of feed. Again, I would always make sure that it was suspended from the roof. You need a fairly substantial piece of chain obviously to handle that weight, and you need something strong in the roof to hold it up. But again, held up nice and high so the birds have to reach in there to get the feed. And a feeder like this, of course, has a very deep lip on it, which means that spillage is going to be minimal, even if the birds do start raking their feed round. So you could start using a feeder like this for some of your alternative feed structures. For instance, if you were using crushed grains, you might decide you were going to use a feeder like this because the feeder is deep enough so the bird is less likely to be able to scratch the grain out. When you start using mixed grains, either pellets mixed with grain or just a series of mixed grains, you run into the problem that birds will sort the feed. And once they sort the feed, the risk of spillage and wasting is much, much higher.